endocrine system. I'm going to take a little tour through the organization of the nervous system. Okay, since we are starting with how the body communicates, there are several ways. One of them is through the neurons, electrical signals. Another way is through chemical. Right? Chemicals are secreted, and your body does various things depending on these chemicals that are released. And so eventually I'll have a folder on, I don't know if it's my S drive or Mr. McCall's S drive, that'll have all the handouts and stuff and PowerPoints and whatever you want on there. So all of this is on a PowerPoint, and you can see. But first. Okay. Where do I start? Off the top of my head. Here it goes. So let's start with the endocrine system. Forget about the organization stuff. We'll do that later. But first is, so we're looking at the endocrine system. Okay? And we are looking at how the body communicates. Don't worry, it'll take about 2 months for you to get used to my writing. So if you take me next year, you won't know what you're writing. So, like Christmas. Yes? Hey! Let me. And so my name is, and then you're going to say, hey, what's your name? Oh, finish. All right, so the endocrine system is regulated by the nervous system. It is chemical messengers that are sent through the bloodstream that affects change in cells. Okay? So it's a chemical messenger that is sent through the bloodstream that affects change in cells. Okay? And we're going to see there are 2 types of chemicals that are sent, and these are hormones. Okay? So as you know, and you'll see in college later and next year, that teachers don't write everything down, right? But you need to listen and write down things that teachers don't write. Like I just gave you the definition of the endocrine system. Right? It's a chemical messenger system that is sent through the bloodstream that affects changes in cells. Right? So you should write it in your own words or however you want to remember it. But things go fast, right? So I talk and sometimes I stop, sometimes I go on tangents, but whatever. Try to keep track. All right, so we are looking at these hormones. Okay, so the chemical messengers are hormones. Okay, and these hormones are the chemical messengers, right, that are sent through the bloodstream. And there are 2 types. Okay, one of them is a lipid-based one, and the other one is a protein-based one. Okay, the big ones like testosterone, progesterone are lipid-based ones, and a lot of you heard, steroids and all that stuff. Those are hormones that are fat-based. Okay, proteins tend to be smaller, and like adrenaline. Some of these fast-acting hormones are proteins. They're only a few amino acids large, so these are larger, and these are smaller. Okay. Now, what we're going to look at is the effect of change that these have on cells. Okay. 2 different mechanisms on how these work. Okay. So let me just, I'm going to say a broad overview first, and I'm going to go into detail with notes. Okay. So in lipids, they're going to flow, they're going to be, let's say, put into the, anyway, they're put in the bloodstream. They're going to bypass the phospholipid bilayer. They're going to go right into the phospholipid bilayer. And the reason they can is they're made out of lipids. So they're quite permeable to that membrane. And they're also going to go into the nucleus. So the nucleus is just another phospholipid bilayer that they're going to pass through. They're going to affect a change in the DNA. They're actually going to invoke protein synthesis. So they're going to activate a specific gene that the cell is going to make mRNA, and they're going to eventually produce a protein that is going to affect the change in your body. Okay? Now, a protein is a little simpler. This is actually a little faster. So these are larger, it takes more time. These are smaller, and they're faster acting. Basically, they do not enter the cell, but they're going to attach the cell through a chemical messenger, and they're going to send a message to the cell to do something, and that's it, right? As opposed to going through this nucleus, and we're going to change through the DNA. Okay, so that's the picture of what we're going to do. So a lipid is basically going to, obviously it's going to go through the bloodstream. They're both going through the bloodstream. And they're going to be permeable to, I should put CM, cell membrane. Okay. And there's a series of reactions that occur here, but I'm pretty sure you don't need to know that there's a whole bunch of chemicals, sensors that are activated and things happen, but I think the big picture is what you need. So they're permeable to the cell membrane and nuclear membrane. So if you don't know what NM is, just put nuclear membrane. Okay. So third is they're going to activate a gene on the DNA or activate protein synthesis to make a specific protein. So activate a gene, that's his gene, by the way. Okay, activate a gene. Protein synthesis, and you guys are quite familiar with this. And then protein, and whatever that protein message is, obviously this testosterone is usually to, muscles, hair growth, and so on, depending on, whatever the hormone is, okay? All right, and here, there's also a series of messengers that are activated once it attaches to the cell membrane. So this is not permeable. Okay. And are you okay with why it's not permeable, why it is permeable? So this is usually proteins tend to be hydrophilic or hydrophobic? Hydrophilic, right? And the phospholipid bilayer, you're going to have, these guys. The lipids are a lot easier, a lot more permeable to this than proteins are, right? This is so hydrophobic here that a hydrophilic is not going to be able to penetrate. Okay. So they're not permeable to the cell membrane. Yeah, I don't. There's a whole bunch of cyclic AMP that goes on in the signals.
I'm gonna cut cell signaling in the next session.
Okay, so basically, a messenger. A messenger is activated. Anyway, spell it better than I do. So a messenger is activated. I can't think of a better word, to evoke change in the cell. Okay, so whatever that signal is, right? And depends on the protein, depends on the hormone and all that stuff. But all I'm saying is not permeable to cell membrane. A messenger is activated, right? And basically you're going to have these proteins that have ligands, that have these things where you can attach to, right? And so you've got the hormone. And they attach. Okay? And then some signal is sent to the cell, right? And that signal is what changes the cell. As opposed to this, that this goes all the way in and a whole DNA thing is done and all that stuff. Okay, so pretty straightforward, right? Basic difference between a lipid and a protein is this goes all the way to the DNA and a protein's made. Here, it's a little faster. It goes right to the cell membrane and a signal sent and off it goes. Yes?
Just to be clear, hormones are made out of both lipids and proteins?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's either a protein hormone or a lipid hormone.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Good. We good? All right. So now to get into kind of the organization of the endocrine system, and this is where Mr. McCall, is it okay if I make a folder in your? Do you have an elective folder?
Yes, there is.
Okay, so.
Cool.
Okay, so I'll send, well, maybe you'll send an email to you where it is. So it's going to be in that folder. And there's basically what I want to do is have and I just don't have it ready. There's a picture of a human body, one of these and one of those. Right? So they're two different ones. And so you're each going to have different glands that you're going to secrete hormones from, right? And that's why you look like that and she looks like that.
Supposed to be.
Well, you just don't look like him. Which is good. Or maybe it's good the other way, I don't know. But anyway, so there's a picture of a man and woman, and you have different hormones, right? But first, to start off with, you're going to have the organization of the endocrine system. First of all, the endocrine system is regulated by the nervous system. And the master controlling gland is the hypothalamus. Right? So if you were to draw the brain here, which I can't draw very well, kind of flat. Okay, and you got the cerebellum. Cerebellum here. No. Yeah. Anyway, don't worry, I teach this for a living. So you have the brain here. Now we're looking at a sagittal cut, so this would be, you cut the brain in half and look at one side, right? So you have the hypothalamus, let's say here. Okay, and it secretes a chemical. So it's sometimes it could be neurosecretory chemical is what they call it. But basically it's a chemical that is going to activate the that's a bad drawing. But anyway, so there's, and then this is let's say the pituitary gland. Anyway, spell it better. There's the pituitary gland, and so the hypothalamus is going to control the pituitary gland. Any idea what the purpose, like the main purpose of the hypothalamus? I don't know how much you've covered of neuro. It maintains homeostasis. Is one of the big functions. So it maintains the balance of the body. So if you get too hot, too cold, it's regulated by the hypothalamus. Okay. So when things go off kilter, the hypothalamus is going to help control that. Okay. So the hypothalamus is going to send signals to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland has various hormones that it's going to secrete, right? And I don't think, I've never seen questions like this hormone is secreted from where, right? It's more of like what is the general function of the endocrine system? Like if they talk about digestion, what hormones are secreted there? If they talk about reproduction, what hormones are secreted there? So it's not like, it secretes like six hormones. Like you don't need to know exactly which ones are secreted from here and here. But anyway, okay, but in terms of organization, you got the hypothalamus is the master controlling gland, and then you've got the pituitary gland, which follows suit depending on what signals are sent. Okay? All right. So as we go on, we're going to have various hormones, and do we go over like specific hormones, like each hormone what they do, or just generally like negative feedback loop and positive feedback?
I think that's generally the way.
Yeah, that's the way I teach it. Okay, so, but you definitely need to know this setup, right? You need to know what controls what and all that stuff. So this is good. Because this is usually a point where you're going to start talking about it. They talk about regulation of specific hormones. You're going to say this controls this, and then this sends out hormones that are going to control other glands. For example, let's go into one that you may be very familiar with is you got a gland down here that is right next to the stomach, right next to the liver, and it controls your sugar. What's that one? Okay, so you got the pancreas. So we're going to go through various hormones, right? And one thing we're going to look at is two types of controls. Like when is a hormone secreted, when is a hormone stopped? Okay, one is a negative feedback loop. And the other one is a positive feedback loop. Okay? Just to make sure, can someone tell me what a negative feedback loop is? Yeah.
When some part of the cycle inhibits or stops another part of the cycle.
Okay, but when? When does it inhibit it?
Right. Or it depends on what the situation is.
Well, of course, but, you know, generally. Okay, so your thermostat is the analogy always given for a negative feedback loop. When does your thermostat turn on? When does it turn off? And that's what a negative feedback loop is. So can someone explain a thermostat? Very simple. Yes.
Kind of like refrigerators, what they have is a heat your furnace until it's above your water temperature, then you have an interval that makes it go back down to your water temperature, and then you have your derivative that kind of adjusts close possible to the temperature that you want.
Okay, way too much info there. But okay, so you said the thermostat turns on, right? What does it give off? Let's say in the wintertime, what does it give off?
It tells the thermostat.
So what turns on? What is it give? What is given off? Heat. Heat. Okay, so all right. Just trying to get that word out. And just based on your example, what is going to turn off that thermostat? What's going to turn off?
When it gets the input that is the right temperature.
But what is that input? Say it again. Heat. So a negative feedback loop is when something is secreted and that which is secreted turns off whatever turned it on. Okay? So a negative feedback loop is when something goes to a high enough level that turns off that mechanism. So let's say you got insulin being released. Okay? And we'll use insulin in the negative feedback loop here. Okay. So let me just use that one since we're on a heat one. So how would you word this? So how would you word that heat thing? Yeah.
When heat gets to the correct temperature, or when the temperature gets to the correct heat, the thermostat turns off.
Okay. So let's do this. When so when a hormone is secreted, it turns it off when it reaches a certain level. So what is going to turn off that gland from secreting that hormone is when that hormone reaches a certain threshold, let's say. When there's enough of it out there, like when there's enough heat, when it reaches that threshold of like 70 degrees, that's what's going to turn off the thermostat. Okay? Okay, so when a hormone is secreted, a threshold is reached, and it turns off the gland from secreting that hormone. So that hormone is going to turn itself off, kind of, right? The heat is going to turn the heat-producing thing off. Okay. All right, so pancreas, can you tell me insulin, how that works? Why is insulin released, and what's its antagonist? What's its antagonist? So yes?
Well, insulin helps to control the amount of sugar in the blood.
Well, an antagonist would be another hormone. So anyone know? Yeah.
Isn't it glycagon?
Glucagon. Glucagon is the antagonist. Okay, but let's see how this works. So, I don't know your name, but she said that insulin is going to release when there's too much glucose in the blood, right? So, insulin's released. What happens to that insulin? Where does it go? Like, it doesn't disappear. Where does it go? So why do you have glucose in your blood? What's it for? Yeah. Energy, but who uses that energy?
Yourself.
Your cells. So where does that glucose go? It goes to the cells. So insulin is basically telling the cells to take in glucose, to take in sugar. That's what it does. It says cells take in sugar now. So it basically opens the gates for glucose only. Okay? All right. So glucose goes away. Okay? Now, let's say that you don't have enough blood in your sugar. Right? So, because you've been running around, you're hungry, you haven't eaten, whatever. Oh, I get it. Sugar in your blood. Okay. So let's say you don't have enough sugar in your blood. I get it now. But you have storage, right? Your body is designed to take everything you have and store it, right? Especially if you have excess, right? Way back when we ran from food to food or from place to place to eat, and a lot of times we didn't have regular meals. So anytime you got enough food, your body was designed to store it. But now we have so much food, your body's still designed to store it. So some of us are getting wider than taller. Anyway, so keep exercising and do all that stuff. But so what happens? How do you get this sugar back into your blood, even without eating? Right? How do you get that back in there? Margo knows.
Well, glucose, well, actually, glycogen, which is stored in your liver, is released by the glucagon.
Okay, so glucagon sends a signal to the liver saying, hey, convert this glycogen back to glucose, right? So all those sugar, saying, oh, it's a lot of carbohydrates, it's not going to get me fat, but it actually is, right? When you take all that sugar is converted to fat, right? And it's stored in various places. Girls down here, boys around here, right? Anyway, as you know. Okay. Okay. So, are we good with glucose, glucagon, that cycle there? So the antagonist is you got insulin decreasing the amount of glucose, and glucagon increasing the amount of glucose. Good. All right. Yes.
So, wait, I wasn't quite clear on where did the insulin go after it's done.
Well, where did the insulin go? The insulin went to the cells, and it stuck on the cells and said, open it. And then it's degraded, right? The cells degraded, right? So it's not like sitting there. It's degraded by the cells, and I'm sure it's taken apart to be used for some other purpose.
Okay.
So, okay.
All right.
Yes. Okay. So, good. Okay. Let's do, there's not, how many, I don't know how many positive feedback loops are. But what is a positive feedback loop? Here's a positive feedback loop of growth hormone. Hey. A growth hormone would be a positive feedback loop. Can anyone tell me what is a growth hormone? What is a growth hormone? Obviously it's in the word, so yeah.
Wouldn't it tell the cell to make new tissues?
Okay, to make new tissues to grow, right? To make itself bigger, to have more cells, to actually get bigger as you have. When growth hormone is in the body, a positive feedback loop is formed, and basically when you have something there, it produces more of it. Okay? So basically, this starts in puberty, right? And then you get to see, well, not in puberty, but puberty is when you really see it. Because you start to grow a lot of different things, and this one's going to initiate the growth of, or release of testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, all that stuff. But basically, a positive feedback loop is when you have a hormone, and the presence of the hormone is going to activate it to secrete more. Okay? Prolactin is one of those. Prolactin is for breast milk. And so when our hormone's there, it tends to release more and more. Right? And our hormone's activated by the suckling of the baby on the breast. So the more you suckle, the prolactin comes out. The more prolactin, more milk is produced. Okay, on positive feedback loop? So the more is there, the more is released. Okay? Here is the more, the negative feedback loop, the more there is, it's going to turn off the gland. Here it's going to activate the gland. Okay? All right. Another one is bone growth and bone, like decreasing the bone. Any idea what hormones are there? Bone? No. You guys heard of calcitonin? Yes. Okay. Okay. So. Okay, let me just make sure I got the hormones that we need to cover. A lot of these questions are going to be more things as you go. Okay, so I don't think we have time to go into. I don't know how much. Like how much detail should I go into? Like.
So I would say there's a good chance that they might be asked something like, give an example of a positive feedback loop or negative feedback loop.
Okay.
So I would.
Well, we covered that. We got stuff for that.
Specific. I would say they should know at least examples.
Okay. So in terms of a positive feedback loop, you've got the growth hormone, right? In terms of a negative feedback loop, you have insulin and parathyroid hormone. Let's see. Let me get some of the questions here. I got those. I need my glasses. And these are the Walgreens ones. I can't see anymore. Quit making fun.
I'm making fun of you.
They are. Okay, so here's the question. Okay. Okay, so let's say, whoa. How much have they done any body systems yet? Like, no. Okay. Okay, that's not good. Well, we could do that question. Okay. Oh my God, look at this. This is perfect. Okay, so discuss the sources and actions of each of the following pairs of hormones in humans and describe the feedback mechanism that control their release. Insulin, glucagon. Right? This is an actual AP question. So basically what you're asking to do is describe the pairs of hormones and describe the feedback mechanisms and that control their release. Okay? So one of them is insulin. And glucagon. Lost what I was thinking. No, I wouldn't. Okay. The other one is, look at that, oh my God, I just made these up and I haven't looked at these in like ages. Hey, careful there. The other one is calcitonin. PTH, parathyroid hormone. And the other one, which we did not cover, but you're going to run through this, hopefully not through a large portion of the AP test, but you are going to run through portions of the AP test where you're like, I have no idea. I just don't know. Because here's the case right here, because I didn't go over these. Okay, so one of them is, oh my gosh, it's even hard to count. oh, that's not hard to pronounce. Thyrotropin. Oops, that's a P. TSH. And the other one is thyroxine. Thyroxine. And this is T4. T4, maybe it's a hint there. Okay, so, did you say you got over the pancreas?
So in today's lesson, half of these guys have seen it this morning. We briefly mentioned about the pancreas.
Okay.
Also, fetal invest.
Oh, okay. Okay, so in terms of, you are asked to, each of the following pairs of hormones, describe the feedback mechanisms, sources of actions of each. So what you're looking for is sources of action and feedback control. Okay, what I suggest is, before you start a question, read it. And then, what's your name again? Eliana's going to go back and read it again, because that's what you should do, just to make sure you get it. Then what you should do is take little notes on what exactly they want you to do. So, two things they want you to do on this one. They wanted you to describe the sources and actions. That means, where does it come from? Where does it come from and what does it do? Right? Then the last thing is, describe the feedback mechanism that controls the release. Okay? So, feedback control. So one is, did we go over all of these? No, we didn't go over all of these. But you do as much as you can. And how much do you need to really do like a 5, if you really wanted a 5?
Isn't it like 64%?
64%. Okay, so if you can get at least half, maybe a little bit more than half, that's awesome. Okay. So it still holds that way for this new setup? Oh, in terms of like 64%, that's how much they, is it still that way?
Multiple choice 50%.
Can't be that. Okay, so, all right, so sources. So what's the source for insulin? And I need the people who already had AP Bio this